As humans, we all have a certain kind of debt to artifacts, whether it's the creepy remains of ancient humans or a very exciting and fascinating early clock. All things ancient amaze us. In the continuation of this article, we are going to introduce you to 16 interesting ancient works of art, some of which are the first of their kind that you will read on the internet. Each of these ancient works of art holds great significance for the human race as a whole. 1. Napoleon Bonaparte's gilded pocket pistol from 1802. In 1802, Colonel Thomas Thornton presented Napoleon Bonaparte with this highly sensitive flintlock, 3-barreled, 120 caliber, gilded pocket pistol. Thomas Thornton was a flamboyant Prince of Pembrokeshire and Marquis de Pont, who spent much of his time pursuing royal pastimes such as hunting, fishing, shooting, eagle hunting, horseback riding, and patronizing artisans and artists. He had the best shooting equipment in all of England. It was in 1794 that a conflict between Thornton and some of his subordinate officers led to a military trial and finally his resignation from the army. 8 years later, in an attempt to regain his lost glory and status, during a visit to France, Thornton presented this extraordinary pocket pistol to Napoleon Bonaparte. A few days later, Thornton received a letter saying that his offer had been gladly accepted, and that all matters relating to his court-martial would be reconsidered. In 2006, the pistol sold at auction for £38,400. 2. Helgo Buddha, Viking treasure from the 6th century AD. Between the 6th and 11th centuries AD, the small island of Helgo, located in Lake Mälaren in Sweden, was a major industrial center for the Vikings and a commercial hub. Since the discovery of the island, archaeologists have been amazed to find numerous ancient artifacts buried there. One of these works was a bronze statue called Helgo Buddha, or Helgo treasure, which was made in India and was one of the most famous ancient artifacts found on this island. The presence of this statue led ancient experts to believe that Viking traders traveled to distant places by water routes. The Helgo Buddha is now housed in the Swedish History Museum, seated on a throne in the shape of 2 lotus flowers, with a silver headband on his forehead and his famous long-eared tulips. 3. Roman ivory doll belonging to the 2nd century AD. The discovery of mummies in ancient Rome was a rare occurrence. In 1964, engineers were working on a construction site when they came across a coffin made of marble. Inside the sarcophagus was the mummy of an 8-year-old girl and a number of ancient works of art that were part of the things buried with the deceased girl's mummy. At the time, this discovery was only the second ancient Roman mummy discovered, along with the very well-preserved body of the ancient girl. One of the items inside the coffin that caught the archaeologists' attention was a doll made of ivory. The history of this doll goes back to the 2nd century AD. A doll that was made with very detailed and unprecedented details, especially the very carefully designed head and face and the hair that was carved in a very neat way. This doll is now kept in the National Museum of Rome in Palazzo Massimo and is a symbol of the beauty ideals of ancient Rome. 4. Observatory desk clock from 1770 AD. This planetarium desk clock is unlike any vintage clock ever found. This clock was made in Paris in 1770 and was part of an exquisite and rare collection of ancient clocks in the Bayer Museum in Zurich. Theodore Beer, the man who owns this watch, has been collecting antique and rare watches since 1940. He opened his museum to the public in 1971. 5. Collar of Roman slaves belonging to the 4th century AD. Engraved text on the collar: I ran away. Arrest me. When you bring me back to my master Zunius, you will receive a solidus, gold coin. What looks like a necklace is actually a slavery collar that dates back to the 4th to 6th centuries AD. From the 3rd century BC, slavery was common in ancient Rome, and most slaves were usually prisoners of war or unlucky foreigners who were captured. At some point in history, the Roman Senate stepped in and decided that slaves and free citizens should have different styles of clothing, and thus these collars were placed around the necks of slaves. These slaves were harassed and humiliated and did all the hard and difficult work. 6 to 300-year-old Chinese abacus ring. This ring was made during the Ming Dynasty, 1644 to 1911 AD, in China. On the gem part of this ring, there is an abacus measuring 1.2 centimeters by 0.7 centimeters with 7 rows and 7 beads on each row. This abacus, known in Chinese as zhuzhen, was a calculating instrument made of silver with beads so small that they could only be moved with a pin or pin. Although this ring was used by Chinese merchants to make quick calculations, the exact time of manufacture, its place of origin and the identity of the person to whom this ring belonged are unknown. 7. Napoleon Bonaparte's engagement ring from the 17th century. This ring, with a peach-shaped blue ruby and a diamond set together, represented the marriage between Napoleon Bonaparte and Josephine de Beauharnais. According to the accounts, many were against the marriage of the two because Josephine was already the mother of 2 children, widowed, and older than Napoleon. Just 2 days after their marriage on March 9, 1795, Napoleon was called to the battlefield to perform his duties. After their return, they were together until 1810 when Napoleon decided to marry Marie-Louise of Austria due to Josephine's inability to bear him a child. Nevertheless, even after the separation, Napoleon insisted that Josephine retain the title of Empress. In 2013, the ring sold at auction for $939,000, 6 times the original asking price. 8. The bullets that killed Abraham Lincoln are 150 years old. We all know that anything associated with Abraham Lincoln comes with a price tag. The bullet that entered the famous man's body and caused his death is kept in a glass case at the National Museum of Health and Medicine and is treated like a precious piece of metal. Known for its large collection of 25 million items, this military museum also houses a piece of the skull of the former President of the United States. Most interestingly, the museum also has tiny pieces of the spine of Lincoln's assassin, John Wilkes Booth, which is well preserved. 9. The world's first artificial limb belonging to 3,000 years ago when the world's oldest artificial limb was found next to a 3,000-year-old mummy. Scientists believed it was part of the items buried with the mummy, something that was supposed to help the deceased enter the new world. But in 2007, a British Egyptologist challenged this idea and claimed that this artificial leg was used by the person while he was alive. This artificial leg is elaborately and skillfully made and has obvious signs of damage and age due to use. This artificial leg is made of wood and leather and was used by a famous and noble woman aged around 50 or 60 years. The researchers made a version of this artificial leg that was worn by some volunteers and walked with it to determine if the artificial limb was actually wearable, which was determined to be completely practical and wearable. 10. The oldest trousers in the world belonging to 3,000 to 3,300 years ago in a relatively recent discovery. The fossilized remains of 2 horsemen have been found in China wearing ornate breeches, believed to be the oldest such breeches ever found. These woolen pants were made separately in the legs and waist and were connected together, and the hem was very open, with luxury pieces sewn on it. These trousers are thought to have been worn by nomadic herders in Central Asia, as they allowed for mobility, especially when on horseback, and protected one's legs from any external hazards such as thorns. Although the date of the first humans riding horses is disputed, researchers believe that the use of breeches occurred shortly after humans rode horses. 11 Intact seal on Tutankhamun's tomb dating back more than 3,000 years. It was in the 20th century that a famous archaeologist and Egyptologist named Howard Carter found the tomb of the young king of ancient Egypt. His remains were buried in a series of 5 coffins that were kept inside 5 tombs. Although the tomb was raided twice, most of the chambers remained intact because they were not accessible. Tutankhamun was one of the less famous pharaohs of ancient Egypt who died young, and a large part of his wealth was buried with him. Despite his relatively lower position compared to other pharaohs of Egypt, Tutankhamun's tomb is very important and full of information from the point of view of archaeologists. This significance is because his tomb is located below the other tombs, which is why robbers could never find it, and almost all of his wealth remained intact and preserved for thousands of years. Due to this position, the entrance of the tomb was sealed with mud and stone, which protected it from floods and other unfortunate events. 12. The oldest recipe for cooking food belongs to 1750 BC. When we think of an ancient clay tablet with strange writing on it, cooking instructions are rarely the first thing that comes to mind. The image you see above is related to 2 clay tablets containing food instructions belonging to the Babylonians. This is no ordinary cookbook, but it is engraved in Akkadian, one of the most complex forms of writing. Many cooking instructions are described on this clay tablet, some of which use very rare ingredients. This special tablet consists of 25 different instructions for cooking broth, which includes 4 types of vegetables and 21 types of meat. Although the recipe is written in the order of ingredients to be added to the dish, it does not specify the amount of ingredient to add, indicating that the recipe is written for skilled cooks. Clearly, this was the food recipe for Visa food in the temples and royal court. 13 Japanese dragonfly hat belonging to the 17th century. The strange hats known as Kawari Kabuto were very common in feudal Japan in the 15th and 16th centuries. During these periods, feudal families constantly clashed with each other. This constant conflict often resulted in open field battles. Kawari Kabuto was worn by high-ranking commanders so that they could see the battlefield better and more easily. These helmets had symbolic motifs that pointed to an aspect of the owner's commander's personality and the ideals of the war in which he participated. In ancient texts, Japan was referred to as Akatsushima, which means the land of dragonflies, which indicates that the dragonfly had great historical importance for the Japanese. 14. The oldest globe depicting the American continent dates back to 1504 AD. This butter is 509 years old and is the size of a grapefruit. This butter is made using 2 hemispheres belonging to an ostrich egg, and some say that its makers made it in Leonardo da Vinci's workshop, or were influenced by the works of this famous inventor. On this globe, the names of 71 places, several ships, monsters, waves, and the sailor of a sunken ship can be seen. Butter made from ostrich eggs represents the knowledge that the first European explorers had about the world at that time. 15 Roman multi-purpose tool belonging to 200 AD. Similar to today's Swiss Army knife, this very old sliding multi-tool is made of silver with iron blades. This tool was found in the Mediterranean region and consists of a spoon, a spatula, a fork, a nail and a toothpick. Experts believe that this multi-purpose tool was personalized and probably belonged to a wealthy and well-traveled merchant. 16. The oldest gum. About 5,000 years old. What you see in this picture is not a stone but the oldest gum in the world. In fact, this piece of birch gum has antiseptic properties that have been very effective in treating oral infections. This ancient chewing gum was found in Finland and teeth marks can be seen on it. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Thank you for liking the video so that more people can see it. To see more videos, subscribe to the channel and press the bell button.